This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshido. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do.
What's up, y'all? Adam Hoots here, the lean builder, Hoots on the ground with No Bullshido. And today I am excited because we get to unveil the mask of our editing genius, the editing goat, as I call him, Mr. Rene Duron with Duron Styles. Welcome, Rene.
What's up, people?
Yeah, buddy, we're going to get to know you pretty deep, but first we're going to get to know the man who made some of you, we'll call it. Ryan, how are you doing this morning, Mr. Ryan?
Good morning. I am great. It is a beautiful day here in San Antonio, Texas, and we've had a little cold snap for San Antonio. We're typically hot and humid for most of the year, and then our winter is a cold front, then another cold front, and then back to 100 degrees. So it's a beautiful day, and I'm excited to be with you guys this morning.
Amen, brother. You guys didn't get any of that snow that came across the south, did you?
Dude, we got half an inch.
Really?
We got a dusting.
Yeah, that's exciting.
A couple of years ago, Winter Storm Uri came through, really caused some damage here in San Antonio. And since then, I think everybody gets really on edge. And typically in the South, right? You don't really have to worry about snow. And so people don't really know how to drive in it. And there's always some accidents here and there. But it was a nice little dusting. So my kids were excited and got out and made a couple of snowballs. So it was fun.
I love it. And
I had to work.
yeah, know the feeling. And generally they say folks start talking about weather when they run out of things to talk about. But I assure you, audience, that is not the case here. We are about to get to know these two amazing people. By the way, this is the second round because the first round did not come out quite the way we wanted it from an audio standpoint. So we're about to just hammer through this, have an amazing time. And I've got a little bit of an idea, a bit of a game here for introduction. So Rene, listen up close here, baby. What I want to do, I want Ryan, I would love for you to introduce yourself, Mr. Ryan. And then Rene, I want you to chime in for any of those big, glorious things that Ryan may have been a little bit too humble to tell us. And maybe you can help complete his introduction. And then when we flip to you, Rene, we'll do the same thing, allow you to introduce yourself and then have Ryan fill in some of those details that maybe you're a little too humble with. So without further ado, Ryan, I want to kick it to you because you are the guest of today, truly the guest of honor. Who is Ryan? Who are you, my man?
Ryan Taylor, born and raised here in San Antonio, Texas. I am first and foremost a follower of Christ. I am a husband, I am a father, and I am a superintendent for the San Antonio water system here in San Antonio, Texas. This year, 2025, I will hit my 25th year of employment at SAWS, which just seems crazy to even think about. I remember going to retirement parties when I was just a few years in, and the one consistent thing that I would hear was it goes by in a snap, and surely it has. And there's things that I can remember just like it was yesterday, but also things I can't really remember. I am a dad of a 15-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. And we are in the thick of club sports. My daughter plays club volleyball for the Ignite Bulverde Volleyball Club, and my son plays for the Piper Warrior Youth Football Association. He will be going into 7th grade. So as a dad and coach of his football team, I have the luxury of pushing those kids up to those 7th grade coaches. And now I get to watch from the bleachers and enjoy, but they are such a pleasure in my life. My wife, her name is Kelly Taylor.
The tech genius, if I could add.
Yeah, the balance to my crazy, the moon to my sun. She's really what holds it down and provides consistency for my family. And so love her very much. I think that kind of covers most of the quick introduction to Ryan Taylor.
But wait, there's more. Rene, what do you got? What did he miss? What did he leave out where you just have to go and shine that light, baby? Let it shine.
Yeah. I'd say Ryan, he always leaves out the motivational speaker, hype man, mentor, superstar, because Brian has been pivotal. He was like rocket fuel to my career at the same company, San Antonio Water System. And I'd even go as far as to say, if it wasn't for Ryan's mentorship and belief in me, I wouldn't be able to live the life I live right now. So, yeah.
Ooh.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. And I want to get into that a little bit more. But first, Rene, let's hear your quick introduction, and then we'll have Ryan complete and round that one off.
Yeah, I want to change it up a bit, because last time I started with career titles, but this time I want to start a little bit different. I like to say, who is Rene Duron? That's me. I like to describe myself as the hero of my own story. And after that, I'm a podcast editor, a construction specialist for San Antonio Water System. I am a father, a believer in Christ as well, and an adventurer.
That's it? You're so much more than that. All right, Ryan, back to you, baby. Fill in those gaps. Come on.
I've known Rene since 2020. I met Rene when the world collectively lost its mind right in the thick of COVID. And everybody has their kind of COVID stories and where they were when the world shut down and what that looked like for them. And so when I met Rene, I was, believe it or not, I was not very happy. And Rene was a bright spot in a tumultuous time. Rene, I think he struggled with self-confidence. So all of those things that he so eloquently advertised about himself, those things were always there. They were always deep down inside that hero of his own story. They just needed a little nudging, a little somebody to believe in and push a little outside of his comfort zone. And also, not just pushing outside of his comfort zone, giving him the leeway to show his own talents, which he showed right away. And I saw that. I saw somebody who was extremely self-motivated, extremely self-disciplined, and he brought that to the table. And Rene, how long had you been at SAWS when I met you? When did you start?
I started SAWS in like November 2017. I want to say I met you around maybe my 2.5 year. I was like 2.5 years into SAWS when I met you.
That's right. So you had started as like a utility tech. You had moved to meter tech, and then went over into leak detection, which is where I met you. And so, Adam, those two positions are kind of entry-level positions at the San Antonio Water System. Meter technician, there's probably a little bit more responsibility, way more, and where as a utility tech, you're on a crew and work with a crew of guys, right? So Rene had already come with a little bit of knowledge of the system. But when I met him, again, the world had collectively lost its mind. And there was some time in my life where I had progressed and left leak detection behind. And then with some stuff that kind of went on at work, I had to go back. And I felt like I was taking a step in the rearview mirror. But sometimes life is funny a little bit, right? And getting to meet Rene gave me a little bit more hope in the future. I think all generations, and Adam, I'm sure you can relate to this, all generations look at the generation behind them and say, oh, we're in trouble. I'll tell you, I was in a church service one time, and the pastor was doing a sermon, and he opened it up with, children are disrespectful. They eat their food too fast. Our next generation is doomed. And so he turns to the congregation and he says, who do you think said that? And it was like Socrates, right? The point of it was, for thousands of years, there comes a time where a generation looks back and they're like, oh my gosh, this next generation is doomed. And Rene, how old are you? Remind me how old you are again?
I'm 30 years old now.
30. All right. So I'm 47. So I'm not extremely older than he is. There was a time professionally where we were just having a hard time getting guys to come in and buy in, and there was a whole host of things why we were having a high turnover rate. And man, Rene came in and said, watch this. And he just blew the socks right off of me. So it has been such a pleasure. And so now, believe it or not, Rene and I rarely see each other, rarely talk to each other. Saws is a very big organization. I think I'm going to get this wrong, probably between 18 and 1900 employees. And Rene is in our engineering department, and I'm more on the operations side where the wrench turners are. And Rene manages contracts and contractors and is the go-between with engineering. And to see a guy come in as a utility tech, work on some meters and stuff, came over to leak detection, learned our distribution system, and to see him where he's at now, man, it's been a pleasure. And Rene, you've heard me say this, but I've fully expected and still expect Rene to be my boss one day, because his trajectory was on fire. And here's the thing, there's a great Tom Brady quote. It went viral a few months ago, but he was talking about how life is hard, right? And talking about football players and waking up to practice and all that good stuff. But the end of that, which I think people don't really, where they miss the point, the end of his little viral speech was, you just have to do what most people aren't, right? What most people, and that's be consistent, right? Show up, come with a smile, come open-minded and ready to do what you can. Rene did that. His self-discipline. When I reconnected with Rene a few months ago, he had said that he had gone to Dallas and ran a
Misagi, the ultra marathon runner.
Marathon. Guess what?
I forgot to mention that.
Oh,
didn't train for it. And for somebody to be able to just, you know what, I have my mind on something and I'm gonna go, and that's mental toughness, right? Rene is mentally tough, and man, he's amazing to watch.
Yeah, I could not agree more, Ryan. And look at the smile on his face. I want to kick it to you, Rene, because those things don't happen on accident. And you mentioned how much Ryan has contributed to the life you're living now. And so I want to kick it to you. And quick question, what does it feel, or how does it feel to hear Ryan talking about you that way? And what did it take? What were the contributions that he made to really drive you to the place you are right now?
Yeah. Well, it feels all warm and fuzzy right here. That's what it feels like. It feels good. It feels good because, like anybody, I'll speak for myself. As a father of 3, a husband, and I'm the sole provider monetarily for my family. My wife is a stay-at-home wife, and she homeschools our children.
Wow.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's a superstar. You feel the pressure. You really do feel the pressure of providing and holding the whole world, my son, my daughter, my baby girl. All their worlds are on my back. That's what it feels like. And sometimes it feels like, dang, am I not doing enough? Are my efforts, am I on the right path to where my kids can have the best odds when they're 18 and they're ready to leave the nest, or whenever they leave the nest, 21, 30, who cares?
Yeah, it's like, how can you engineer an advantage for them?
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect. How can I engineer an advantage for my children? And sometimes it makes you those little intrusive thoughts like, yeah, you ain't on the right path, or you made this misstep and it's gonna cost you, buddy. Those negative thoughts creep in, right? And to hear Ryan say all those kind words and all that feedback, that positive feedback, it's good. It feels really good, and it's, I think it's just what the doctor ordered. That's that rocket fuel I'm talking about. And then to your next question, what were the contributions that Ryan made? I mean, he saw that in me. When I started at San Antonio Water System in 2017, I feel like I had the fortune of getting the back end of the maybe machismo culture of just be quiet, do what you're told, don't ask any questions, freaking get in there, fix the thing. And if you don't know how to fix it on day one, get out of the hole and don't even freaking do anything. I got the back end of that. I think I got the very last cart on the train with my foreman. And shocker, he's no longer an employee at Saws, but he was like that. He was very like that. And there's a lot of good and bad, right? Because you learn good and bad things from that culture, I think. It's not all bad. But instead of just focusing on my shortcomings, I think Brian, and God bless him, I don't know how he did it, but he was able to see talent in me. And I was a super giant nerd growing up, and I'm computer savvy. And Ryan was able to see that, and he was able to expose me to opportunities where I can really shine on the administrative side. And adversely enough, him giving me and exposing me to those opportunities, it like unlocked a mental block in my brain to then also shine on the technical side with the turning wrenches side of things too. Because I was like, whoa, like somebody recognizes I'm not all bad, because I'm not a natural superstar at fixing this thing. I need help. I need guidance. I need somebody to teach me how to do it. I don't just get it naturally. But I'm good at this other thing. And Ryan saw the other thing. And then when he recognized the other thing, it like removed the block that was preventing me from catching on the first thing. So now I was good at both things. And I really give Ryan that credit of unlocking that. He was the first to really see that. And I don't know how he saw it, because a lot of people didn't. Thank God for him, because it made me truly believe, like, man, I can provide value to San Antonio water system. As before, I didn't really think I could. I was like, man, I'm not a superstar like all these other folks. And that's the trick question of it all. These folks that I have on a pedestal, I'm like, man, Bob over here, he's awesome. Like he sees this problem A and he knows the answer right away. He knows how to fix that. He can handle any curveball. Yeah, but Bob has 30 years experience. He's been here for 30 years. I'm on my first year. I mean, what do you expect? But I didn't see that. And I guess something about what Ryan did to recognize the talent that I did have allowed me to have it, unlock this like patience and perspective with the growing process of like, yes, I'm not experienced as the 30-year veteran. However, I have the capacity to learn what they know. And Ryan helped me understand that. And I think that's a very unique skill and character trait that you don't see a lot. It is super common where I see supervisors, managers, people that are higher in the pay grade, and I watch them and I observe them and I observe their actions and their behaviors, and a lot of people in very high places, they don't have that what Ryan has, where they want to see the good in people. It's usually the opposite, where they're just complaining and, oh, this people don't do this, they don't do that, we're waiting on them. And Ryan doesn't think like that. Or at least that wasn't the Ryan that I was exposed to. And thanks to Ryan, I was able to do what I do now.
Yeah, I love it. Very well said. Renee. I want to kick it back to you, Ryan. But before I do, I'm sensing this mentor-mentee relationship, which I believe is a necessary action in order to really drive success and learning transfer to the next generation. All of that, we're in construction, we are losing workers at a rate of 5 to 7 to 1, right? Meaning for every 5 to 7 that either die or retire, only one is coming into the business. I think a lot of that has to do with that machismo culture that you mentioned, because, yeah, it does still exist. We are getting better, as you said, Renee, but there are a lot of just old dog mindsets, as I'll call them. And this is one of the bright spots, I think, of what we're doing is we're trying to connect this new generation and these old dog builders and really help them inform. And that's part of what this podcast is about. Help people who have already had that experience to learn a better way, to really drive that knowledge to the future through a podcast so that people can pick up on it and so that they don't have to learn those lessons themselves. I'm fascinated with, as I'm sitting here and just watching you guys kick it back and forth to one another, this mentor-mentee relationship is everything we need. And it takes two different sides of the fence, right? Like you have to have a mentee who's open-minded, as you said, Brian, has a growth mindset, self-discipline, that's willing to take what you're telling them to put it to action. But you also have to have a mentor which is willing to slow down, see something in the other person, and feed it or give it some Jocko rocket fuel, as you said, Renee. And so the question I've got for you, Ryan, is like, what is that process of like, how did you find the good things that Renee had and look through the inexperience? Like, what was that process of discovering all of the special talents that Renee had or has?
Man, Adam, that's a great question. You hit the nail on the head. We're onto something big, and that is human connection and that mentor mentee relationship. And look, I don't think a supervisor is a mentor, right? I think a supervisor supervises and makes sure metrics are being met, provides guidance and assistance, but a mentor is something much different, right? And so let me take it back to what Rene said about the culture at the time. And he said that he's on that tail end of that machismo thing. First of all, I'm a history lover. I love watching documentaries and studying. I don't want to sound like an academic but studying.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. Like human development, right? And what I will tell you and what I am sure of is hurt people. And so Renee was in this area, and we don't have to say names, and I don't even remember who your foreperson was at the time, but I guarantee you the way he came up was with lashes on the back, right? With lashes on the back. And the same way he was treating Renee, he had gotten treated that way. And unfortunately, you see it on the criminology side, right? When an abusive husband has a son and he grows up to be an abusive husband, right? Because it's what he was exposed to. It's funny, guys. I was literally just having this conversation yesterday with one of our executives about bridging that older generation with this new generation. And I was talking to my director, and I was upset about something and the way something was being handled. And he looked at me and just said, look, things have changed, and how can we adapt and change? So I want to give a lot of credit for my ability, if you will, that what Renee's talking about, to my mom. Oh my gosh, I'll tell you guys, my work ethic. I grew up in a single parent home. I have a brother, and my mom raised me and my brother Randy, and at times worked 3 jobs. And I'm a big guy, right? My brother's a big guy and had to feed us big kids, and man, she absolutely struggled. And it's funny because at the time you're struggling, you don't really know you're struggling until you get a little older and you have observed things like, oh man, that was really tough, or those were tough times. My mom taught me to be present, right? Show up, have that work ethic. And this is an underrated thing, but to smile, show up and smile. When you show up and your body language is off a little bit, or your body language actually speaks more than what's coming out of your mouth sometimes. And she was just always bubbly and great sense of humor. And I learned that work ethic from my mom. She worked for the San Antonio Police Department. She was an administrative clerk. She worked in the youth bureau. And so when minors would get picked up off the street for doing something bad, she would help intake them. And she brought a lot of that trauma or baggage kind of home, because it's sad. Like, you see kids that are out there absolutely lost and don't have parental supervision and are out there. And so that was one thing that I don't want to say I made a pact or something where I'm not going to be. Look, guys, I made a bunch of dumb decisions too as a kid. And I'm a firm believer, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And being surrounded by good, strong people that have the same values, and that's a big help. I was involved with the youth group at my church as a youth. That really helped. But there's personalities, right? And everybody brings something to the table. And sometimes some of those things are negative, and they're bringing their own trauma, their own hurt. And so working through that, or looking or accentuating on the positive. Somebody calls into work and you're pretty sure that they just don't want to come into work that day. And you have a decision to make in your mind. Do you want to give some grace, or do you want to rule with an iron fist? And what I tried to do was be in the middle and be understanding and know that. So for Rene, for example, he was already married. I think he had 2 kids when I met him. But again, the weight of the world, right? You have that traditional role where dad goes out and works and provides monetary assistance, and wife is making the home. And it's funny, Rene introduced me to the term crunchy. I'll tell you, Rene and his family are the crunchiest of the crunchy. They're great. And I
don't know what that means. I'm really hip to the next generation's language, but I don't know what crunchy means.
Yeah, let me tell you what crunchy means. So crunchy it's a mindset. God has blessed us and created us to be healthy. And he has provided, and his provision is sufficient enough to heal us, which involves holistic medicine, herbal type of stuff. In a nutshell, instead of Tylenol for a headache, we're going to drink a tea. That's what crunchy is. We try to do everything the natural way before we had big pharma answering all of our problems. We try to take a natural approach to our physical ailments.
Love that.
Amen. Right? Which is why my youngest daughter was born at home. No hospital, born right there in my bedroom.
Wow.
Successfully.
That's amazing.
Easily. My wife made it look easy. I'm not even exaggerating. She made it look so easy. It was crazy. I should have recorded it. We'll record the next one.
No, you're good. No editing needed there. We're good.
We'll put it live on the Whole Ground podcast.
Easy now, brother. We're not that crunchy over here, okay?
It's an amazing story, and Rene can tell you offline. The term crunchy, I actually think comes from, and I think I Googled it one time, it comes from granola. Am I right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what we used to. I did not know that.
So if you said they were little granola, that was my generation's terms. Now I'm following you. Okay.
Yeah. So I know we just went off on a sidebar there, but again, Rene has the weight of the world on him, right? And they're living a very traditional marriage and home life. And if Rene called in because he had to get his child to a doctor or something like that, again, am I going to rule with an iron fist or give a little grace and understand the human experience. And so I think when we talk about the relationship of mentors and mentees, a mentor really needs to be able to understand the human experience and some of the baggage and trauma and hurt that people naturally bring to the table, and be proactive in working through some of that stuff as it redirects back into what you're doing professionally. And so what I prided myself in was, and it's funny because some of my colleagues at work, some of my other superintendents are like, man, Ryan, you know everybody, right? And it's not necessarily true, but I network, and I do that by showing up and smiling and asking questions and being present. And I do that because there's going to be a time where, and I'm in the wrench turner phase of what we do professionally, in an emergency standpoint, in the middle of the night when we have a large diameter water main break and we have subdivisions out of water, I know who to call and I know how to work and garner that support, and not only who to call, but know who's going to answer their phone too. And so that's also big as it relates to being a part of the solution. And so Rene always heard me when I worked with Rene. There was a saying that I always had, and it's very basic, but you're either going to be a part of the problem or you're going to be a part of the solution. And how can we sit here together and work through this? And there's going to be compromise, right? You're not going to get everything you want. When I was with Rene, we did this really cool technology. It was using satellites to find leaks. So you heard that right. A satellite in outer space is circumferencing the Earth in the atmosphere and is able to find a potable water leak. When we had this technology, there was a lot of change in our group. And so what I had to do was, how do we get from bridging the gap from what traditionally has worked for us, which what we called it BOG, and it's like HOG, but B stands for boots on the ground is what we called it. Boots on the ground leak detection. Yeah, there you go. And so that was what we had traditionally always done, and it was always acoustically based. And so we're going from that to this really strange technology. And so what I had to do was try to bridge that gap from a management standpoint to our guys standpoint. And so, and you know what? Something else I've learned is nobody likes change, right? Nobody likes change. And so that was a struggle. But here's where Rene comes in, right? So we had a consultant, we had the sellers of the technology, and they would come in, we would have like weekly meetings, and we had to make the technology kind of work for us. And so Rene was absolutely pivotal. And here's where I discovered one of his talents. Rene is a great writer, a phenomenal writer, actually. And so he wrote an SOP, a standard operating procedure, because look, this technology, you have to make it work in your system, right? And your system might be different than other people's systems. And not to get too far deep into the woods, but Rene was pivotal in trying to get the other guys on the team on board. And that was tough. That was very tough. But Rene wasn't their supervisor, right? Rene was one of them. And so it wasn't like they were hearing it from me or somebody from an executive level. So Rene was the first to kind of really buy in, right? And look, you know what? Sometimes you got to be willing to be a part of the solution. And so Rene was phenomenal at that. And just wanted to be present, wanted to learn. He is a consummate learner. He's always trying to learn and just develop himself.
Yeah, beautiful. I think a lot of times when we're trying to incorporate change, like you said, nobody likes change, Ryan. The tech, the satellite leak detection system seems like a pretty big change, a pretty big, I'll call it lean initiative, right? We want to improve our operations. We want to get better. I think a lot of times we, especially from a lean mindset, we try and take this lean tool or this lean thing and we come in and we've got these very rigid, structured applications of lean and all these white papers, those academics that you mentioned earlier. Just kidding. But they have these ways, right? And they're telling you, hey, A before B, before C, before D. And it doesn't always work that way, right? I love how you said you had to take your system and make the tech, like you had to modify or adapt the technology to fit within your system versus taking your system and making it fit into this rigid technology. And I think that's huge from a lean initiative, from a continuous improvement mindset. Right? We want to be able to be flexible enough with the tool that we're adding to our systems such that the system stays rigid and the tool helps it in lieu of the tool being rigid where the system has to be modified. I think that helps with some of that change initiative that we're driving. You also mentioned three hard lessons that your mom gave to you, Ryan. Be present, have work ethic, and show up with a smile. And so, how do those three things, Ryan, how did those lead to the discovery of this Rene, this self-disciplined Rene? Yeah, I'm a little slower than most. You may have already said it, but can you really directly call it out for me? How did Mama's lessons, those three lessons of be present, have work ethic, and show up with a smile, how did those convert to the discovery of a new generation that's willing to put their time in?
So, well, showing up and being present aren't the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can,
tell me more.
work ethic is you're not feeling well, you got the weight of the world on your shoulder and you need a break, and so you call in, right? And my mom, she misses that day, she's missing out that pay, right? And nowadays there's leave and things that, and so your paycheck might not be short, but if a director of mine who I have so much respect for, he says, when you are here, I need you here. And what that means is being present, right? And so being present for me is when you're at a meeting and you're sitting at a conference table or something, and these things are a huge distraction, right? And people are here and they're listening and they'll lift up their head, right? And chime in. Is that being present, right? Is that being present in what we're trying to accomplish? Rene was present. He was bought in to, we're going to make this work somehow, some way, because that's what we're doing. And we had other guys that weren't as interested in that. And because of the change, right? I've done it this way. I'm always going to do it this way. And Adam, I'm going to tell you, in related to that, this satellite leak detection, it was like the guy who invented the stone, right? Versus SpaceX and Elon Musk. It was that far apart. Would you agree, Rene?
Yeah, dude, that's perfect.
Okay.
That is a perfect description.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when you have that drastic of we're doing something completely different, and you don't have a staff of people that are really bought into it. I had one, maybe two on the staff, and one of those was Rene. But the difference with Rene is he was actively trying to make it work, actively trying to bridge that gap and putting it in writing. And we would work together. And because when you're sitting behind a desk and I would try to get out into the field and be present with them, it's very different than you're out on the street and you're a wrench turner, right? And you're trying to make it work. And so, and then the last thing, Adam, is he would show up with a smile. He would And he would laugh at my very inappropriate jokes sometimes. And Adam, you're fully aware of this. In the construction industry, there is no line as far as what's appropriate and inappropriate. And so Rene just embraced all of it, and he didn't get his feelings hurt when things weren't going his way. And he would show up with a smile and laugh, and okay, that didn't work, on to the next, right? And how can we be as efficient as possible? And he literally wrote the book on it, and a lot of that was 100% him. And I saw that, but it was also me. And again, this is not me patting myself on the back here. It was me showing trust, giving him that rope, if you will, giving him the rope to go out and understand it and then put it into action. Because a lot of times supervisors, they keep that leash tight. They keep it very tight. And sometimes you need to give a little leeway.
Hey, I empowered him, I engaged him, and I equipped him. And then he did the rest, right? I mean, that's what I hear you getting at. I'm curious, what's Mama's name, Ryan? Because these 3 lessons, I can't get them out of my head right now.
My mom's name is Barbara Nefford. Okay. She spent 34 years with the San Antonio Police. She's been retired now for about, gosh, has it been 20 years? Yeah, probably 20 years. And she is living a very happy retired life and enjoys her grandkids. But yeah, she and you know, Adam, it wasn't just her. It was, when we talk about mentors, right? And we talk about, it was a whole slew of family members. Like my aunt and uncle, they worked for our sister company, CPS Energy, and both of them worked very long careers. And out of high school, there's a lot of kids that come out, and college isn't for everybody. And there is a oh crap moment, right? Of what do I want to do with my life? And I had very good examples of people that worked in public service,
Yes.
that worked a very long career and are living a comfortable life. In public service, you're probably never going to be wealthy, rich per se, but you can make a hard-earned living. And if you make smart financial decisions, you can live a comfortable retirement. And I had really good examples. I was very lucky. I had really good examples of what that looked like. And so, and not everybody does. And I identified that. And so not everybody, again, everybody brings their own kind of trauma and baggage to the table. And not everybody is at the starting line together, right? And being able to identify that, work through it to get people where you need them, it was just something I was naturally good at.
Yeah, you just said one of the things I wrote down, that you've lived and been around people who have dedicated their life to serving other people. And that is not an easy task. It is not, because a lot of times it's been taken for granted, right? You show up in the middle of the night to fix a broken water main, and all the people can say is, why don't I have water? What's their demands are a little outrageous,
Yeah.
and sometimes. So thank you for that. I am very grateful. I hear you chalking it up to luck a little bit, and I would push back on that to say, hey, it may have been luck that those people are in your life, or maybe somebody engineered that in such a way to give you an advantage. I want to kick it to you, Renee. Where does Miss Barbara's 3 lessons fit into your world now? And are these the lessons that you culminated from Ryan, or are there other lessons that you also have drawn upon your mentor-mentee relationships? And again, those lessons from Miss Barbara: be present, have a good hard work ethic, and show up with a smile. Where do those land with you?
Yeah, to me, that sounds like pieces of the extreme ownership mindset. Be present, show up with a smile, hard work ethic. And I think where Ryan and Barbara fit in that Is there like the real life application of what extreme ownership looks like? And maybe the catalyst for how I'm going to do it? Because it was like the perfect storm when I met Ryan. Because I think when I met Ryan, I was already reading Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And Ryan, whether he was aware of it or not, was making it very easy for me to see where I can apply the extreme ownership principles, such as hard work, show up with a smile. And what's the other one?
Present.
Be present. Because it's like all those things, you're in there, right? If you're in the middle of the challenge, in the middle of the suck with
Asagi.
everybody else, yeah,
That's great.
if you're in the middle of it and you're experiencing results, positive results, it's up to you to help the other people. If you know something the other people don't know, it's your responsibility to teach them, because you're not in a vacuum. You're on a team, whether you're aware of it or not. As an employee, whether you're aware of it or not, if you're killing the game, it's up to you to help your boy to the left and to the right to kill the game too. And it only hurts you to hoard that knowledge. And it's counterintuitive because you think, well, if I teach that guy how to do it, he's going to outshine me. And that's the lie that has been unfortunately spread, is
Perpetuated.
perpetuated, is that
Yeah.
if I show the guy the
Look at
way,
that
he's going to.
academic word. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Good. And after reading that book, I was like, no, that's not the way. That's not the way I'm going to be successful here, is by hoarding this knowledge. It's only going to get me so far. But if I spread this knowledge and this mindset, I'll be even more successful and help others, not only help myself be successful, but help others be successful too. And I think Barbara and Ryan, their application of the extreme ownership principles helped me to see how to do it myself and have almost like a case study to see, oh, that's how they did it. Now I can do that. Where how and then okay, this is a little tricky. How can I apply this here?
Yeah, the embodiment, right? It's okay. I'm reading this theory over here, and it's wonderful and
Yeah.
great, but a little bit academic, to use Ryan's terms, and keep just poking that sword. But then there's this practitioner side, right? And it's okay, how do we get from the book to the field? And to have somebody like a real life example embodiment of those principles, like that's a beautiful way to just be able to follow the almost connect the dots kind of conversation, right? It's easy to get there when you have a real life example who's somebody who's using these principles and it's working for. I absolutely love it. And by the way, a little bit of a brag and a flex here. I got to meet Jocko Willink and take a little selfie with him about 2 months ago. He came and he was the keynote speaker at the Lean Construction Institute's Congress this year. And so, like, unbelievable opportunity there. We're going to be in Texas next year, y'all. So I'm counting on you, Rene, to bring Ryan to Arlington to LCI next year, where we're going to have a blast. And I hear there's some pretty awesome, amazing keynote speakers coming to that one as well that you're not going to want to miss. So I am going to hold you two to that. I'm going to come to Texas and we're going to do this again in person in October. And I'm already forecasting that. Deal?
Count me in.
Deal.
Yeah, I
let's
love
do
it. I love it. Okay, so I want to hit, maybe we'll start with you, Rene. I want to know how, for both of you, I want both of you to answer this question. How do each of you serve others using these 3 life lesson principles that Miss Barbara bestowed upon Ryan?
Okay. And I go first, right? Okay. So the principle were show up
Be
with a
pre-
smile, be
Yep.
present, and hard work ethic, right?
Yep.
How do I serve others using that principle? First of all, I think if everybody in the world operated with those 3 principles, we would all have a way more enjoyable work experience if we would all do that at all times. But you can't, it's not enough just to say, man, I wish they would do that. Or if leadership would act like that, we would be in a better place. No, it starts with you. That's the extreme ownership. You need to practice and embody the principles you want others to practice and embody. That's the only, you can preach it all day till you're blue in the face, but until you show them what it looks like, regardless of your circumstances and your feelings and whatnot, it's very difficult for others to practice those things consistently if you're not doing it yourself. So I think the way I serve others is I try my best to do that. I think I got the smile, show up with a smile. I think I got that on lock. That's just God-given gift. Do not ask me how I'm able to do that. It just comes out. I don't know. I don't know how. Hard work ethic. I feel like I just came from lots of reading, honestly, starting with extreme ownership. But that book, I experienced like the most return on investment with that book. I applied that stuff and boom, immediately saw this stuff works. And like my career started blowing up right after applying the extreme ownership principles. So that kind of covers the hard work ethic stuff. And hard work ethic is, I think, at the top of the umbrella, and underneath that is a bunch of other characteristics. But hard work ethic, I think when I hear the word hard, when I hear that phrase, I think showing up no matter what, and becoming like a master of your craft, and then being present. It's impossible to live in the future or the past. There is never a future or a past. There is only the now, right? Shout out Eckhart Tolle. There
Yeah.
is only the now. It's just, you can think about the future, you can think about and try to plan for the future, you can dwell and reflect on the past, but there is only ever the now. So it doesn't serve you to be dwelling on the past. It doesn't serve you to be anxious about the future. You just gotta do what you can right now. That's all you can do. So being present, really understanding that concept and practicing that concept, I think helps you have stronger relationships, because when people are talking to you, or you're in a meeting, yeah, you could be on your phone answering all these fires, right? Or you can be present in the meeting because you're having a meeting for something. I'm here in the meeting right now. These people will survive in 15 minutes when I'm done, and I can get to them then. But if I can be present right now, I can contribute and be fruitful right now in the present with the folks in my meeting. So I think that's how I serve others, with those three principles.
Yeah. So the book you're referencing is called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I actually did a solo podcast after I read that book, and it really changed my life. I think people are very intentional with words. They're very intentional with actions. And only when you are here and in the now and in the present can you really truly pick up on those words and those actions to formulate what they're trying to communicate to you. And unfortunately, too often do we allow people to escape, I'll call it, or water ski, as another one of my famous lean idols, Mr. Jesse Hernandez, who I think you both know pretty well in that San Antonio space. He calls it water skiing, right? Like where people will toss out a few words or terms to see if you're in the now. And typically you're going to miss them because the world moves so fast. You mentioned the distractions, the things that get our attention, and we're just not here, present, 100% fully committed to this conversation, right? And we end up missing a lot of those triggers or those keys where people are looking for help. People want help from you, or they want you to care or dive in a little bit deeper. And if you're not 100% committed to now, you're going to miss those opportunities to take somebody from skiing on the surface to scuba diving, to getting vulnerable, to being transparent, to being able to really get into some of that trauma and baggage that you mentioned earlier, Ryan. And one of the things you said also, Rene, that really hit me between the eyes, that lean idol of mine, Mr. Hernandez, says all the time is, be the change that you seek. It's so easy to be like, oh, my boss, if you would only read this book, or if that superintendent would only just go and listen to this podcast, the world would be such a better place. And guess what? That superintendent or that boss is probably saying the same thing about you. So concept of extreme ownership by Jocko and taking it and owning it and being able to, no, this podcast is for you, right? This podcast is for me. Like, I'm getting better listening to these principles. And so I love it. Smile through the suck. Like, that's a beautiful term that I'm taking from this personally. But I want to kick it to you, Ryan. How do these three principles enable you to serve others?
So, in hearing Rene and talking about those three principles, and Rene, for the record, you were reading Extreme Ownership when I met you, because I remember you telling me about it. And I think it might have been my introduction to Jocko, which was pretty cool to talk about. Just a savage of a man. When you can't bring anything else to the table, right? So, and I tell this story all the time. When I started at the San Antonio water system, I was greener than green. I knew absolutely nothing. I knew that when I woke up in the morning, I could go turn on the faucet and brush my teeth and flush the toilet. And I knew that went somewhere, had no idea where it went, no idea where the water came from. There was a water meter, but that was about it, right? And then you're introduced to this expansion matrix of infrastructure below your feet that, and Adam, you talked about it, you completely take for granted. And it's one of those things that you don't know until it's not there, right? And so with those three things, having a strong work ethic, being present and showing up with a smile and willing and able, if you can do those things when you have nothing else to offer, right? You're going into an entry level position and tell me to go replace that meter. I have no clue what that looks like. I need to be trained and showed and modeling the way, right? And so as we talk about, there's this great book called, I believe it's called The Intentional Father, and we need more good dads out there, and that will develop values, right? And we talk about like core values, and at SAWS, our core values are excellence, integrity, respect, and safety, right? So how do we model, what does excellence even look like? What does integrity look like, right? And we can go to Webster, right, and look up the definition of integrity, and it's probably going to say something about doing the right thing when nobody's looking, right?
Or you could look in the mirror.
Or what is it in action, right? What is it in action? And so, and I think Rene was hitting on this a little earlier. Sometimes you have your own personal values, right? And some of those, like the values that my mom taught me, or values that you picked up in a book that you want to apply to your life and that you've seen extreme return on investment, right? If I just invest a little bit in, oh my gosh, just instantly blessed. And so I encourage people to hitch on with, and I'm telling you, I know it sounds corny sometimes when people just espout values and mission statements, but they mean something. And when you're doing it, when you're living the core values, man, it makes life not easy. I don't want to say that. It'll make it to where when you're in the suck, right? When you're in the suck, those are little lighthouses, right? Those core values are little lighthouses that are going to guide you out of that suck. And the suck's going to come. The suck is going to come. It comes for everybody. And having those good, strong core values to fall back on, and understanding and just giving grace when grace needs to be given. From a professional standpoint, from a personal standpoint, I can't tell you how many times my wife has shown me grace when I have fallen on my face. Our children are going to do things that disappoint us and things like that. And putting yourself in their shoes and and when you can do that, man, you're gonna have a recipe to be successful.
Yeah, I'm hearing you get into the empathy world a little bit there, right? Putting yourself in others' shoes. Grace is a term that I've struggled with quite a bit.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, especially when I start becoming more and more self-aware, I start realizing I'm not really worthy of forgiveness, or I'm not really worthy of that next chance or another chance. At least that's how I feel.
oh,
I've heard grace described as unearned favor. How would you define grace, Ryan?
well, raised in a small kind of Southern Baptist church here in Texas, grace is one of those things that's never really explained. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Adam. It is given when you deserve not. Right?
Mm,
And I'll tell you, man, there's been so many times where I've been given grace in my professional life, in my personal life, in my social life, because we're all gonna fail. We're all gonna fail. And there's gonna be times where you need it. And if you're willing to step back from the situation and take a look and understand that you've been given grace, and so you need to give it as well. And that works in all aspects of your life.
amen. Amen. All right, we're coming down to the end, and I want to get some final thoughts from each of you. But before I do that, Renee, when is the last time you experienced grace?
That's a good one. I'm gonna say in my current role right now at San Antonio Water System, that's super fresh in my mind. I've experienced grace a lot throughout my life. So I'm a construction specialist for our engineering and construction department, which means I get to come up with fancy ways to deliver bad news to people about
Okay.
the status of our construction process. I deliver data on the status and health, if you will, of our construction projects. So I analyze workflow turnaround times. How long is it taking for this submittal to be accepted? Is there an RFI that's been open for 150 days that's unresolved? Why is it taking that long? That kind of stuff. I have data on across all of our construction projects, and I deliver that information to our engineering and construction managers, VPs, and directors. And I say all that, it's just making me like, wow, that's the first time I've ever explained in that way what I
It
do,
sounded
describing what I
awesome.
do.
Yeah, it
And
did.
I mean, that just came off the dome like that.
Like a project, you sound like a construction project manager is exactly what you sound like. Yeah.
And it's funny, I say all that, and the grace is like, dude, who the hell am I to be doing this stuff in the first place?
Oh,
I showed up to Saul's desperate to scrape together a living for my wife and my son. I was enrolled in my first year of college. I was going to school as an early childhood major, and I thought I was going to be a teacher. And I was making like $9.50 at the time, and I just had my son, and we're living in my mom's house in one bedroom with me, my wife, and my son. And I'm like, they don't deserve this. Like, they don't deserve to just be here stuck in one room. My mom's coming in the room every 30 minutes or so to check on us and making sure we're not making more babies, you know. There's got to be something more than this. And I was like, I cannot afford privacy for $9.50 an hour. And I started talking to my buddies and my friend Ruben. Shout out Ruben. He was working at San Antonio Water System, and I think he was a meter tech at the time, right? And he was making like $16 an hour. And this was back in 2015 or 2016, right? And I was like, dude, that's life changing money. I was like, get me in. Like, how do I get in? And he's like, I could put in a good word for you, but it's not gonna be a cake job. You're gonna work, you're gonna get dirty, it's hot, all this stuff. And I was like, I don't care. I need to get out of my mom's house. And I did, and Saws took me in, and I started off as a helper, like a utility technician, turning the wrenches, getting dirty, getting wet, getting smelly. And that was 8 years ago. I started no experience, no engineering degree, nothing, just showing up with a smile on my face and a freaking wrench in my hand and a little bit of balls. And here I am now, 8 years later. I'm delivering these reports to our vice president, and I'm about to do a presentation on this data to our leadership team meeting in front of our CEO. And it's just crazy. Like to me, that's grace. Because like you said earlier, some would describe it as undeserved favor, right? And I'm this blue collar, could say dropout, but I have heart and I have balls and I have character and I care. I care about people and I care about the folks on the job. And that was enough. That was enough to my director. That was enough to my manager. That was enough to Ryan to see that, hey, yeah, this guy doesn't have the paper, but he has the heart. Let's give him a chance. See what he does. And I think that's grace, because technically one could argue I didn't earn that, but one could also argue I did. I don't know. But I think that's grace, because it's just, I shouldn't be living this life. I shouldn't have an office that I have right now. I shouldn't be inside freaking typing away at a computer according to the social standards of you need a degree to do this. I'm giving results anyway. And I think that's grace. I think that's grace because they gave me a shot anyway.
If I could cut you off here and just say, I heard in this podcast, and again, I was being present, I was working hard on listening, and I was smiling the whole time, but I heard that you're one heck of a writer and that maybe you do belong in that office, pecking away on that keyboard, and that maybe you could make some more of a difference from that perspective. So great explanation, amazing story. I love the storytelling skills too, man. Rene, you are one special human being, and I'm grateful that God has placed you in my life to be able to help teach me and drive me too. I can't even tell you just the energy that you bring when I talk to you, when I see your name on my phone from a text message, or when I'm scrolling through TikTok and I see, hey, I'm getting ready to do this podcast with Hoots and Ryan. Like, I saw that this morning, man. That was cool. That's again, that's that hard work ethic. That's that thing that nobody can take from you. And it's one of those things that I love and admire the most about you, Rene. So thank you for being you, my man. I do, before the editor of this amazing podcast gets too mad at me, we're going to have to cut this thing down here. Ryan, if you could close us out first with your final thoughts, just everything we talked about, where we're at now, where we're heading. What is your message to the world about just driving better humanity forward?
Oh, man. Well, first, let me just reaffirm Rene, because this is what this podcast is about, is our relationship and where he has gotten. And so I think in the Bible, James, it talks about faith without works. And so Rene has displayed faith with works. And so that grace, when we talk about the way he feels like grace was given to him, a lot of work was put into that. And so don't ever sell yourself short. And I'm going to tell you, I think every man struggles with this, is when they look at themselves in the mirror, what could I have done differently? And I try to do that. And so many people, when things aren't going around, it's very easy to start pointing the fingers, right? And what I try to do is, man, okay, where's my part in this? What could I have done differently? And just try to be more self-reflective and really work on that. Very quickly, we were talking about grace, and I'm driving my son to school yesterday, and I've coached my son in football for the last few years. And I am that crazy sports dad. And so not the punch people or stuff like that, but I'm the very loud guy on the sideline, and I've been known for that. And so
Makes two of us.
Yeah, I'm driving my son to school, and I said, hey, son, and I don't even know how we even got on the topic. I said, Austin, when you like rate your coaches that have given you trauma, what would you, and I mean, there was no skip in his breath at all. He's like, you, and there's not anybody else close, right? But then he just hit me with the grace part, which was, Dad, I know that's going to prepare me for when I play for the high school coaches and when things are bad. Like, you always stood next to me and you were loud and you had high expectations, and yes, that was tough at my age, but it's going to pay off. And for him to just hit me with, yeah, dad, you were a monster coach, right? But man, I know it's going to pay off for me later. And man, what wisdom from an 11-year-old, right? And also just an affirmation of, man, maybe I'm doing some things right. But we've been talking, Adam, about the human connection and kind of modeling the way. And I want to leave with this part. Have you guys heard of a guy named Timothy Keller? Tim Keller, he's a pastor. He's passed away, but I want to just, man, hit you with some wisdom. So he said, the way up is down. The way to become truly rich is to give it away. The way to true power is to give up power in order to serve. The way to real happiness is to seek the happiness of others more than your own. You lose your life to find it. And so that gets very biblical and with Jesus's teachings, but there's a lot of wisdom in there. And Rene talked about not hoarding things, right? If I have something, let me give it away. Let me give it away. And Rene lives he talked about data and analytics, and now he's doing reports and man, I'm not a data guy. I'm a heart guy. I live in that anecdotal world where data, it can be sliced up 1,000 different ways, and you can put, I probably shouldn't say this, but you can put lipstick on a pig, right?
Yeah.
It's
You can
still a
make
pig.
numbers say anything you want.
Yes. But there's real wisdom and truth in human connection, in service. And that's what I try to do. I try to serve. Facilitating success is what I try to do with my staff now at work. And sometimes that means getting out of the way. And I had to get out of the way of Rene because he had rocket fuel behind him. So yeah, I'll leave it with that.
The way up is down. That's what
The way
lean
up is down,
builders
baby.
do. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what lean builders do. That's what give it away. The best things in lean are free, a lot of times counterintuitive. Man, you got me, Ryan. I am, that was powerful. You said Timothy Keller was the
Oh
name of
yeah.
the, okay. I'm going to find
Yeah. Oh
him.
yeah. He's phenomenal. Yeah. You'll find his sermons all over any kind of streaming service. He's great.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Rene, how are we going to close this thing out, man? What is your final message to the Lean Builder Nation?
Man, I mean, I can't top Ryan's closing right there. That's so good.
There you go.
Amen. That's what lean builders do. You two, clearly the human connection is real. Clearly you're making an impact, Ryan, not just on Rene's life, but I think I see a little bit of Rene making an impact on your life as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So thrilled we did this again. We're going to have to do it again in October in person in Texas. I'm coming to get y'all. I am grateful for being able to facilitate this conversation and just to be able to know you two awesome humans. You guys make me better. I am grateful. I am thankful. And Ryan, that was a beautiful way to end it. Rene said everything you said, the way you ended it with Timothy Keller's quotes there, that's what lean builders do. Paying it forward, all the blame, none the glory. That's what lean builders do. Guys, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise.